Dylan Mercer thought this would be just another easy takedown, another casual slaughter for his highlight reel. He opened his mouth to humiliate her, but didn't realize he had just walked straight into his own trap and locked the door behind him. He tried to recover, scrambling for control, but every word, every stammer, every desperate attempt to claw his way back only buried him deeper. And her? She just watched. And when she finally delivered the final blow, when the audience saw who the real joke was that night, one thing became crystal clear. Dylan Mercer wasn't coming back from this. But let's start from the beginning. The studio was a pressure cooker, the kind where one wrong move and the whole thing blows sky high. The cameras rolled, their unblinking glass eyes capturing every flicker of movement, every bead of sweat, every tightening of the jaw. Millions of viewers were tuned in, waiting for another smug, liberal beatdown of a conservative guest, something the truth, unfiltered, had turned into a well-oiled sport. And tonight's target? Karoline Leavitt, 26. She wasn't just another guest. She was a problem, poised, articulate, unapologetic. She had walked into the studio knowing exactly what was about to happen, and yet she sat there, back straight, shoulders square, hands folded deliberately on the table in front of her, like she was about to judge Dylan Mercer's entire existence. And in a way, she was. Dylan Mercer, a man who considered himself a brilliant political commentator, but was really just a glorified human clickbait machine. Late 40s, with Botoxed confidence and a permanently smug expression, he had mastered the art of performative condescension. Tonight, in his tailor-cut navy suit, he looked more like a Wall Street reject than a talk show host. And he was smiling. Not because he was happy, because he was hunting. And Karoline was supposed to be his next easy kill. He leaned back in his chair, his legs crossed so casually it was almost an insult. The gold Mont Blanc pen twirled lazily between his fingers, his signature move before he went in for the kill. The audience, hand-picked for ideological purity, waited, primed like a pack of hyenas just before the weakest in the herd got devoured. Dylan exhaled dramatically, shifting slightly to face the camera before turning to Karoline. "Well, well, Karoline," he drawled, flashing the kind of smile that screamed, "I'm about to ruin your career, and it's going to be beautiful. I have to say, your outfit choice is interesting." And just like that, the first shot was fired. The audience chuckled on command. Not real laughter, not the kind that comes from an actual joke. No, this was the forced laugh track kind, the studio-conditioned Pavlovian response that had been trained into them episode after episode. Karoline? She didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't so much as shift in her seat. Her only reaction was a single, perfectly arched eyebrow. Oh, it wasn't a question. It was a warning. Dylan leaned in slightly, sensing blood in the water. Big mistake. He lifted a lazy hand, gesturing vaguely at her blazer, like it was offensively outdated fashion, his fingers twirling like a snobby wine critic, judging a $5 bottle of Merlot. It's just so politician from the 1950s, a little Nancy Reagan cosplay. Laughter exploded. It wasn't natural. It was too enthusiastic, too perfectly timed, too desperate, like an engine running too hot, ready to burn out. Karoline remained motionless. Not a scoff, not a sigh, not even the slightest tightening of her jaw. She just let it happen. She let the laughter hang in the air, let it fade out slowly, let it die an awkward, unnatural death, like a party trick that wasn't as funny as the host thought it was. And then she spoke. "Oh, Dylan," soft, patient, deadly. "I love how liberal men always tell conservative women how to dress. It's so progressive of you." And just like that, silence. The audience froze mid-shift. Dylan's smirk twitched. Just slightly, but it was enough. A single hairline crack in the illusion of control. Karoline tilted her head slightly, like a predator studying weak prey. "What is it, Dylan?" Her voice was smooth as silk, but there was a weight behind it, the kind of casual authority that doesn't need to be loud to be felt. She watched him, her eyes sharp, unblinking, daring him to say the quiet part out loud, the part where he'd never in a million years mock a progressive woman's outfit, where he'd never tell Hillary Clinton to switch it up, where he'd never joke about AOC's pantsuits, where he'd never criticize Kamala Harris's wardrobe, because if he did, his career would be over. And now he was staring at his own hypocrisy. In 4K, on live television, the audience, they felt it, the energy shift, the unraveling. And Dylan? He was drowning. He opened his mouth, then shut it, tried again, failed. Karoline's lips curled into a knife-sharp smile. She wasn't done. Would you rather I show up in a neon pantsuit with "End Patriarchy" bedazzled on the back? She shrugged, letting the words land, settle, detonate. Or maybe wear a dress made entirely out of recycled Twitter virtue signals? The audience erupted, but not for him. This time, for her. Dylan chuckled nervously, his face tight, forced, like someone who had just realized they weren't the main character anymore. No, he laughed, waving her off, his fingers gripping his pen a little too tightly. I just think... You think? It was so smooth, so effortless, so perfectly timed, it could have won awards. The crowd, Dylan winced. It was over. The control, the narrative, the room, gone. He had just walked into the lion's den wearing steak-flavored cologne. And Karoline? She was starving. The studio had transformed into a battleground, and Dylan Mercer, usually the one swinging the sword, was now staring down the sharp edge of it. The tension. You could carve it out of the air with a spoon. Dylan shifted in his seat, his once cocky posture starting to fold in on itself like a badly made house of cards. His fingers twitched around his gold Mont Blanc pen, tapping it against the desk in an offbeat rhythm, not out of confidence, but out of pure, unfiltered nerves. Across from him, Karoline Leavitt didn't even blink, her demeanor unshaken, unbothered, undeniably in control. Her blazer, the same one he mocked minutes ago, still sat perfectly crisp, the American flag pin catching the studio lights just enough to make a statement without even needing words. She leaned back, slow and deliberate, like a queen watching a rival king, realized he had just put himself into checkmate. Dylan, she said smoothly, her voice so calm it was almost eerie. Do you know what the funniest part of all this is? Dylan's throat bobbed as he swallowed, his forced confidence now hanging by a thread. He could feel it, the shift, the loss of control, but there was no way out now. He had started this. And Karoline? She was about to finish it. Do tell, he managed, forcing the words out, his usual smug delivery now tainted with unease. Karoline's lips curved into a slow, calculated smile. Not a friendly one, not an amused one, not a polite, let's move on one. No. This was the kind of smile that said, you walked into this fight blind and now you're about to get wrecked. She tilted her head slightly, watching him, assessing him, like a cat toying with a mouse that doesn't yet realize it's already dead. Then she spoke. You wouldn't dare say this to a liberal woman. Silence, heavy, cold, unforgiving. Dylan's smirk cracked, just slightly. His fingers tightened around the armrests of his chair, his knuckles turning just a little whiter. The audience shifted. You could hear it, the subtle movement of people leaning forward, the energy twisting in real time. Even the producers behind the cameras, still as statues. They weren't looking at Dylan anymore. They were looking at Karoline, and she wasn't stopping now. She let the moment sit, let the weight of her words settle deep, let it squeeze the air out of the room. Then she tilted her head just a fraction more, her voice dipping into something softer, sharper, far more dangerous. Oh no, Dylan, she continued, her voice dripping with faux concern. You'd never mock AOC's outfits, or Hillary Clinton's, or Kamala's, but me? Fair game, right? Dylan's mouth opened, then shut. There it was. The pause, the stumble, the moment his entire argument shattered in real time. And everyone in that room felt it. Dylan felt it. The audience? They were watching it unfold in 4K. The silence was now louder than any applause. And Karoline? She wasn't done. She leaned forward just slightly, letting the lights catch the dangerous glint in her eyes. You want to talk about outdated fashion choices? Her voice was smooth as glass, but beneath it was steel. She lifted a casual hand and gestured toward Dylan, toward the overgroomed, try-hard aesthetic, the slicked-back hair, the tailored suit that screamed desperately holding on to relevance. "Look at you," she said, her tone laced with mock curiosity, like she was genuinely fascinated by the walking contradiction sitting in front of her. "You're out here looking like a midlife crisis Ken doll, but sure, let's talk about my blazer." The audience exploded. Not the fake, coached laughter from before. This was real. This was people laughing because they couldn't help themselves. And Dylan? Dylan twitched. A tiny movement, almost imperceptible. But Karoline? She caught it. She saw the way his grip tightened on the desk, the way his jaw tensed just a little too much, the way his eyes darted, not toward her, but toward the producers, searching for a lifeline. But there was no saving him now. He was on his own, and he knew it. Now, he stammered, his forced chuckle landing flat, empty. "There's no need to—" "Oh, but there is." She cut him off so effortlessly. It was like she had been waiting for that exact moment to strike. Her smile never wavered. She tilted her head again, her tone still playful, still light, but now there was something sharper beneath it. "Because, let's be honest, Dylan, you didn't mock my outfit." She let the words sit. Hang, dig in. Then she leaned in, just a fraction more. "You mocked me." More murmurs. A shift in the room. Dylan exhaled sharply, his grip on his pen so tight now his knuckles looked like marble. Karoline wasn't just winning, she was dismantling him. And the audience? They knew it. Dylan tried to interject. He tried to laugh it off. He tried to salvage what little was left of his manufactured superiority. But there was nothing left to salvage, because Karoline wasn't done. She tilted her head one final time, her voice soft, but sharp enough to cut. "So tell me, what is it about me that bothers you so much?" Silence. Pure, absolute, suffocating. Dylan froze. His brain scrambled for an answer, for something witty, something dismissive, something that would shift the power back to him. But there was nothing. Because the moment he answered, he lost. The audience? They could feel it. The producers behind the cameras had stopped breathing. The crew members exchanged glances. Because Dylan Mercer, the king of smug takedowns, the master of manufactured viral moments, was cornered, with nowhere to run. And the silence? It was deafening. Dylan Mercer was drowning. The teleprompter? Useless. The earpiece? Silent. His trusty gold Mont Blanc pen? No longer a symbol of control, just a nervous fidget toy in his twitching fingers. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was the host, the master of the stage, the one who called the shots, who lured guests into his web of sarcastic takedowns and gotcha moments, only to leave them floundering in front of his eager, hand-picked audience. But tonight, he was the one floundering. And Karoline? She wasn't just winning, she was annihilating him. She sat across from him, not smug, not gloating, just calm, poised, inevitable. Her navy blue blazer, the one he had mocked, still pristine, still perfectly fitted, still utterly unbothered. She didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need to interrupt or talk over him like he had tried to do to her earlier. She just watched him. And the audience? They were watching too, waiting, sensing the blood in the water. Then she spoke. Dylan. Soft, controlled, like she was speaking to a child who just realized they made a terrible mistake. You built your entire brand on progressivism, but when faced with a strong woman who doesn't think like you, she let the words linger, let them settle, let them tighten around him like a noose. Then, with surgical precision, she delivered the final cut. You crumble. The audience murmured, some nodded, a few even gasped. Dylan twitched. He shifted in his chair, his usually relaxed, sprawling posture now stiff and rigid. His jaw tightened, his grip on his pen nearly crushing it between his fingers. His eyes darted, quick, nervous, to the producers behind the cameras, looking for help, for backup, for anything. But none came, because they knew, they could see it. This was unsalvageable. Karoline had done something irrevocable. She had tipped the scales. The audience? They weren't laughing at her anymore. They were listening. And Dylan, he had nothing. Nothing. Karoline tilted her head, watching him, as if she was waiting to see if he would attempt some sort of last-ditch escape. He tried. Oh, he tried. I was just making a joke. His voice came out too high, too forced, too desperate. Big mistake. Because Karoline, she didn't even let him finish. She held up a hand. And he stopped. Immediately. It was instinctual. A reaction so ingrained that his own brain betrayed him. The audience saw it. The producers saw it. The internet, they would see it within the hour. Karoline's face remained neutral. Her lips barely twitched, but her eyes deadly. "Oh, I know," she said smoothly, her voice carrying the weight of finality, "and that's why it's so funny." Dylan's breathing hitched. He knew. He knew. This wasn't just a bad moment. This wasn't just a rough interview. This was career suicide, live, in high definition, broadcasted to millions. And Karoline? She wasn't done, She leaned back in her chair, looking as calm, as effortless, as victorious as a queen surveying her conquered kingdom. Then, with the kind of unshakable confidence that comes from knowing you have completely dominated the conversation, she dropped the final hammer. Because now, she let it sit, just for a second, let him feel it, let the weight of it sink in, then, "You're the joke." Boom! The studio detonated. The audience erupted. Not the forced, rehearsed laughter Dylan was used to. Not the canned, obedient amusement designed to prop up his ego. No, this was real, uncontrolled, undeniable. Dylan turned red, his lips pressed together so tightly they almost disappeared. His shoulders stiffened, his hands gripping the desk like it was the only thing keeping him from falling off the edge of the earth. Because, in a way, it was. This wasn't just a bad night. This was a reversal. The kind of shift in power that didn't just end interviews, it ended careers. The producers behind the cameras, panicking. The crew members, holding their breath. The social media team, already bracing for impact. But the damage, done. And Karoline? She didn't need to say another word. She simply stood. Dylan? He didn't. Because he couldn't. She adjusted her blazer, the one he had mocked, as if she were dusting off the last remnants of his failed attack. Then, she turned toward him one final time, and with the kind of smirk that people screenshot and turn into memes, she delivered her parting shot. "Next time, Dylan?" A pause. A breath. Then, "Dress for the occasion." She turned on her heel, and with the unmistakable presence of a woman who had just dismantled a man on live television, she walked off stage. The cameras were still rolling. The producers were still scrambling. Dylan was still frozen in his chair, blinking, processing what had just happened. But Karoline? She didn't need to stay and watch, because in less than 10 minutes, this moment would be clipped, uploaded, and replayed millions of times. And by morning, the internet would do the rest. What would you have done in Dylan's place? How would you have responded in that situation? Share your thoughts in the comments. Have any of your friends experienced something similar? Maybe you've been in a situation like this yourself. Let's talk about it. Drop a like if this story resonated with you, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss more eye-opening moments. This story wasn't made to create conflict. It was made to shine a light on an important issue and make the world a better, fairer place. Your opinion matters.